Hi guys, I am back with another video. It's your girl Tass. If you're new here, welcome. Hi. And if you're an OG, you already know me. Welcome back. So based off the title of today's video, as you can see, I'm about to go over a step-by-step guide on how to fill out form I-751, which is petition to remove conditions on residents. Okay, so to find the most current version of this form, you go to the USCIS website and download the form there as seen, and that's the form that you would use. This form says it expires the 31st of the 3rd 2027. This is the latest version of the form that's on the USCIS website, so this is the form that we will be using today. It is also very important to note when filling this form out that the conditional green card holder is the petitioner. Okay, so this is not to be confused with the previous application, which was I-130, which was a petition for alien relative, where the current green card holder was the beneficiary and their citizen spouse was the petitioner. In this case, you, the conditional green card holder, you're the petitioner because you're the one asking the USCIS to remove the conditions on your green card. So that is very, very, very pertinent to note before we even begin this application. Okay, so let's begin. So this top part of the application clearly is to be left out because it says for USCIS use only. So that's this entire section where it says start here, type or print in black ink. That's very important. So if you're gonna type this form out, then print it after and submit it via mail, that is fine. But if you're gonna write in your answers, it is suggested or it is only accepted to use black ink. 1. Information about you, the conditional resident. Family name. So in my case, I have two last names, my maiden name and my married name. So for example purposes here, I'm going to continue with that example and use two last names because that is my legal name. So other names. So in my case, Johnson Brown, Marianne Johnson Brown is my current legal name for example's sake. But previously, I was just known as Marianne Johnson. So that's where you'll put that information. And if you have changed your name over a period of time, then there are different slots available. If you need more space, then part 11, which is the additional information section of this application, does have space for you to provide more information if that's necessary. And we're going to get to that part very, very soon. So let's move on. So you put your date of birth in. Next would be section 5, country of birth, Jamaica, of course. Country of citizenship or nationality, provide all that apply. So I'm only a citizen of one country, and that is Jamaica. So alien registration number. This is the same as your USCIS number, which as shown on screen, this can be found on your green card. So that's the number you're going to put in. And of course, you're going to also put your social security if you have any, your USCIS online account number if any. So you'd have this number if you've previously filed an application online or have any online records with USCIS. Now, if you did file the I-130, or sorry, if your partner filed the I-130 and you did create an online account, you should have this number. And again, on your screen, I can show you where to find this number as indicated by the diagram. And you're going to just put that number in. If you don't have any, you're just going to put NA for not applicable. And this is what the instructions that accommodate this form state, that if something isn't applicable to you in this particular application, NA is what you need to put. Status, single, married, divorced, widowed, you're going to click the one that's most appropriate. So married. Date of marriage, for example, place of marriage. For me, I had put both the city and the state. If the marriage through which you gain conditional residence has ended, provide the date it ended, date of divorce, or date of death. So if this is basically saying that when you first gained your conditional residence, right, the first green card, right, the one that we're trying to renew now, if it is that you got a divorce since then, since doing this application, put the date that marriage ended via divorce, or if your partner died, unfortunately, then they put the date of death. Okay, in this example, none of these are applicable, neither death nor divorce. So again, in a conditional resident expires on. So again, on your screen, as shown by the diagram, you can find the expiration date of your conditional green card on the green card itself, and you're going to put that date in. So part 1 continues, and it says information about you, the conditional resident / you're the petitioner. I really want you guys to get that in your head. So now it requires your mailing address and information. So in care of, you're going to put your name. Number 16 says, is the physical address different from your mailing address? If it is, you hit yes, and what you do is you'd put the physical address here if it's clearly different from the 123 Hilltop View, for example, in Newark, New Jersey. Oh, wait, sorry about that. But if it's not, it's no, and then you move on. You're just going to leave this section blank because you already indicated that it's not different. So henceforth, number 16, the answers to number 16 and number 17 of the form are the same. Number 18, additional information about you, the conditional resident. Are you in removal, deportation, or rescission proceedings? You hit yes or no depending on what's applicable. Was a fee paid to anyone other than an attorney in connection with this petition? Yes or no? Have you ever been arrested, detained, charged, indicted, fined, or imprisoned for breaking or violating a law or ordinance excluding traffic regulation, or committed any crime which you were not arrested in the United States or abroad? Yes or no? If you answered yes to item 20, which is this one, provide a detailed explanation in part 11, the additional information section, which again we're about to get to at the end of this form, or on a separate sheet of paper, and refer to the what initial evidence is required section of the form, I-751 instructions to determine what criminal history document to include with your petition. Now, what this part is talking about, that's a lot to say, right? So basically, with this form, it's accompanied by an instructions form. Let me pull that up right here. So this is the instructions form that accompanies the I-751 actual application, right? So if I haven't gone over this form as yet, I definitely will. And if I have, then just refer back to this video that I'll link in the description and in this actual video here. So this form is very, very, very useful because what it does, it literally tells you step by step, line by line for each section of the application, how to fill it out, what to do, what not to do, the color ink to use, like every single thing you could think of. It answers the question for you. Okay, so moving on from question 20, let's go to question 21. It says, if you're married, is this a different marriage than the one through which you gain conditional resident status? So yes or no. Have you resided at any other address since you became a permanent resident? Again, yes or no. In my case, yes, and that's how part 11 comes in, and I'm going to show you. So here it says, if you answered yes to item 22, please provide a list of the addresses of all the addresses where you have resided since becoming a permanent resident and the dates you resided at those locations in the space provided in part 11, which again is the additional information section of this application. And I'm going to show you that very, very shortly, and it's very important that you are honest and you do fill that section out. Is your spouse or parent spouse currently serving with one or employed by the US government and serving outside the United States? Yes or no. So biographic information, of course, fill this out. Hispanic, Latino, not Hispanic or Latino, your race, your height. So part 3, basis for petition. So in this section, the form is asking you, how are you filing? You can either file jointly or you can file individually. So if you're filing jointly, you're going to provide your spouse's information, etc. Now, in cases where you're filing individually, that may have been caused by the death of the spouse, like the previous question on page 1 indicated, or it might have been through divorce. So right here, it's basically defining what joint filing means. It's either you're filing with your US citizen or lawful permanent resident spouse, and then it says or Then you go to or. So waiver or individual filing request. So if your spouse has died, then you clearly can't file with the spouse through whom you got your conditional residence. Or if you're saying that there's a divorce, but the marriage was initially entered into by good faith, but for whatever reason, it has ended. Then you're going to move on to part 4, where it says information about U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident spouse. If filing as a child separately, information about the U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident step parent through whom you gained your conditional residence. In my case, it is a spouse, so the relationship is a spouse. So you're going to select that box and you're going to provide information about your spouse. So here you're going to put name, last name, date of birth, social security number, and a number. Now, if your spouse is a citizen, they more than likely don't have an A number. So again, just put an A because that's what's applicable here. Physical address. If you and your spouse live together, of course, this is going to be the same as the address you provided for yourself earlier in the form. And if it's a different address, you're going to put that there. Province and postal codes are not applicable here. So NA again, because we do have a zip code because my spouse resides in the United States. Okay, so now we're at part 5 where it says information about your children. Provide information on all of your children. If you need extra space to complete this section, use the space provided again in part 11, which again is the additional information section. I feel like you guys are so accustomed to hearing that by now. So if you do have children, you're going to fill their name, date of birth, and a number in. If the child is born in the US, they're not going to have an A number, an alien number. But if the child is going through the permanent resident status as you are, the permanent resident channels as you are, then they may have an A number and you can provide that there. If not, and it's not applicable, then you're asked to answer questions 4 and 5. Is this child living with you? Yes or no. Is this child applying with you? Yes or no. No, say you didn't have children. You can just put NA in all these sections, and of course question 4 and 5 wouldn't be applicable, so you wouldn't need to provide an answer because there's no child that you're listing on the application, and then you would move on. Now all of part 5 basically ask about a child. Now if you did provide information about a child in the first section of part 5, then of course you're going to need to provide the child's address. It's the same, so child 2 name, address, the same for child 3. The space here provides for 5 children, so if you do have more than 5 children to list on this application, again part 11 of this application provides for additional information. Okay, now let's move on to part 6. So it says accommodation for individuals with disabilities and or impairments. This note is persuading you to go and read the instructions that accommodate these applications. Remember the instructions that I showed you earlier? So what it's saying is that go and read what this section means before filling it out on the application. And again, if I haven't gone over those instructions in detail as yet, that video is coming up shortly, so stay tuned. Now, it says, are you requesting an accommodation because of your disability and or impairment? Yes or no. Are you requesting an accommodation because of your spouse's disability and or impairments? Yes or no. Are you requesting an accommodation because of your included children, disabilities and or impairment? So if you included any child in the application, like I stated earlier, if they need accommodation because of certain disability and or impairment, that is what number 3 is speaking of. I didn't include any children, so, and if you did and they don't have any disability or impairment, you're gonna hit no. Now it says if you answered yes to item numbers 1 to 3, select the applicable box, and you're going to basically provide more detail on what this accommodation is that you're requiring, if it's American Sign Language or whatever. I didn't hit yes to 1, 2, or 3, so I'm going to just leave these sections 4A, B, and C blank. Now let's move on to part 7. So it says the petitioner's statement, contact information, acknowledgement of appointment at USCIS Application Support Center. certification, and signature. So read the information on penalties in the penalties section, again in the instruction section of this application before completing this part. If you have selected box 1A in part 3, your spouse must also read and sign the petition in part 8. Signature of the conditional resident. Children under 14 years of age is not required. A parent may sign. So if you included any child in this application and the child is below 14, they are not required to sign. A parent must sign on the child's behalf. And then for this section where it says if you selected 1A in part 3, your spouse must fill out part 8 of this application. So let's refer back to what part 1A of part 3 is referring to. So that is this section that you basically, if you indicated that you're filing jointly with your spouse, which I did, what that is saying is that my spouse, I am filling out part 7 and my spouse needs to fill out part 8 because I've indicated that he will be on record as filing jointly with me. Petitioner statement, again, the conditional permanent resident is the petitioner here. So select the box that is applicable basically. So I can read and understand English and have read and understood every question and instruction on this petition, as well as my answer to every question. I have read and understood the acknowledgement of appointment of USCIS Application Support Center. If you use an interpreter, you're gonna indicate that there. And if you didn't, then 1A is what's applicable. I have requested the services of and I consented to. So if you use someone else who is or is not an attorney, you're going to put their name here and then select is if they are an attorney or is not if they aren't an attorney. If you are using an attorney, he or she will know how to fill that part out. So petitioner's date, time, telephone number, your mobile number and email address. So for this section, acknowledgement of appointments at USCIS Application Support Center, you're gonna write in your name in black ink after you've printed out this application. You're not gonna type it in. So I'm just gonna leave this section blank as we speak because I don't want you to get the idea that you're gonna type your name in. If you're doing this on your laptop or computer, you're not. You're gonna write it in black ink after you've printed the application. That's very, very important. So part 7 continues, petitioner certificate. So you're basically certifying that the information you've provided, of course, is true and honest and correct. So you are signing and you're dating. Also, for this section, you are going to fill this in with black ink after you've printed the application. So for here, and here, fill in after you've printed out the application. So it says note to all petitioners, if you do not completely fill out this petition or fail to submit required documents listed in the instructions, USCIS may deny your petition. So remember earlier when the question asked, how are you filing? Are you filing jointly with your partner or are you filing individually? And that individual filing may be because of your partner's death, because there has been a termination of the marriage through divorce or annulment, or because you were subject to some form of cruelty under your citizen or legal permanent partner's hands. This section that says note, it says if you're filing based on claims of having been battered or subject to extreme cruelty waiver or individual filing, you're not required to have your spouses or individuals listed in Part 4's signature. And that makes sense because if you're saying that this person has caused you harm, has been cruel, and you're filing individually, then what this section of the application is saying that it's protecting you from going to this person to ask for their signature in support of this application. And that is why you're okay with doing it on your own and filing individually, because of the cruel or harsh conditions that you were faced with living with this person with, or just like the extreme cruelty or hardship in the relationship basically. why I particularly like this section of the application, because honestly, it's a reminder that if you are with a partner that is treating you unfairly or being cruel, you don't have to stay with them because you are in the process of having your immigration status adjusted or whatever the case may be. I feel like too many times individuals who migrate feel, yes, the marriage was entered into good faith and things have happened. You don't want to feel like you have to stay in a bad situation and suffer any form of abuse or violence because this U.S. citizen spouse or this legal permanent resident spouse um, gives the impression that they have the upper hand. They do not. They do not. It's okay to file individually. You do not have to stay subject to any form of abuse or cruelty under anyone's hands. I would just suggest get a very good immigration attorney, and they're out there plenty and they'll be able to assist you. That is my 2 cents on the matter. Let's move on to part 8. So in part 8, it says spouses or individual listed in part 4's statement, contact information, acknowledgement of appointment to USCIS Application Support Center, certification, and signature. And it says if applicable, because again, if you aren't able to get the U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident spouse's signature for whatever reason, then it is understood why it is not present on the application. Part 4 was a section that is asking information about your spouse, so name, information about their address, and etc. So this section, part 8, is what they need to sign. So again, it's asking, is the person able to read and understand English? If they use an interpreter, you're going to select that, put the interpreter's name there. If they use an attorney, put that part. Or if the person is not an attorney, but just someone who assisted with the application, you're going to put their information there. Spouses or individual contact information. Again, this section where it says acknowledgement of appointment at USCIS Application Support Center is the same as what you would have done earlier in part 7. So again, for this section, the spouse is going to write their name in black ink after you've printed the form out. So for right now, we're not typing anything in. All right, let's move on to 6A, spouses or individual signature. Again, same as with you. This is filled in after the form has been printed, and here, so here, here, and here after the form has been printed. Let's move on to part 9. It says interpreter's contact information, certification, and signature. So please provide the following information about interpreters. If you did use an interpreter, so if you listed an interpreter here, they want to know what is the last name, first name, and the business or organization of that interpreter, if any, the interpreter's address, and contact information. So I didn't use any interpreter, so that's not applicable with my situation. And if you did use an interpreter, which is completely fine, the interpreter would sign to their name or write their name in here, their signature date, same as what you would have done with your spouse, sorry. And then part 10, contact information, statement, certification, and signature of the person preparing this petition if other than the petitioner. So again, if you indicated that you had someone to helping you prepare the documents, an attorney or otherwise separate from your interpreter, that's where this information comes. Their name, address, telephone number, same as what you've been doing so far. Where you didn't use such a person, this section wouldn't be applicable, so not applicable. And if you notice, this application is pretty much straightforward. We're literally almost at the end. But if your case, if your situation, if your immigration story isn't as straightforward, it has a little bit more nuances and uniqueness to it, go ahead and contact a immigration attorney, which will be more than happy to help you and take on your case. Again, this is not legal advice. So this part says prepare a statement. Again, if you didn't have a preparer, you would leave this blank. if you did have a preparer who's an attorney, he would know exactly what to do, because he would need to fill out what is called Form G28, Notice of Entry of Appearance as an attorney or accredited representative with this petition. Part 11, as you can remember, is the additional information section that I've been referring to countless times throughout this application. So it's literally the page that provides extra space, and it says, let's read, if you need extra space to provide any additional information with this petition, use the space below. If you need more space than what is provided, you may make copies of this particular page to complete and file with this petition, or attach a separate sheet of paper. Type or print your name and a number, again, which is your USCIS number, which is found on your green card, if any, at the top of each sheet, indicate the page number, part number, and item number to which your answer refers, and sign and date each sheet. We're going to fill our name in. Okay, so if you guys remember on page 2, which is right here, I had indicated that I have resided at another address than the one that's currently on this application since becoming a permanent resident. And the instructions were, if you answered yes, then provide the additional information on the additional information page, which is page 11. So on this page, it asks you to provide the address of the residence, and of course, the dates you resided there. Okay, so where it says page 2, that's found at the bottom. So you're at page 2. Let me show you. So page 2 is where I'm answering the additional information about. Then it says part number. So again, the sections of this application are divided into parts. So this is part 1, and then the item number is 22. So part 1, item 22 on page 2. So that's how you fill that in. And it wants to know the address and the dates you lived at that residence. So let's put an address that you previously lived at. I personally couldn't remember the exact day, but I remember the month, so I put that in. A good way to find this date, I would suggest, if you're able to, and if you have copy, to go back to your form I-130, which your spouse petition for you to become a permanent resident in the first place. On that form, that address that you put, if you lived at a separate address now than you did on that form, right? That form will have the date that you lived at that first address. So that's what I would suggest, to make the dates consistent. Put that date in here as the day you started living at that address. And of course, things changed, and now you live at a separate address, which is the current address you're providing on this form, if you guys get what I'm saying. So I referred to that form, and that's the date that I'm about to put in. Okay, so now that you have the dates filled in, again, you just want to make the dates consistent. If you have lived at several different places before filling out this application, since becoming a permanent resident, of course, the spaces are provided here for more information. And it does say that if you need more space, to make a copy of this form, or to just use a blank page and fill it in. But ensure, if you're doing that, if you're using a whole different sheet, to always fill in your personal information. So your name and your A number. That's how USCIS is able to track your records, or track your documents, if it is that your page does become loose, becomes misplaced, or whatever. So you want to ensure that your A number and your name are always on your document. If it is that you want to provide information for more children than the space that was provided in the section where it asks about children and residents of those children, again, this is where you'd put that. Okay guys, listen up, we're at the end, but this is very important. If you don't have any other additional information to provide on this application, that is perfectly fine, but you absolutely must, you have to still fill out the section that asks for your personal information, which is your name and your A number if you have one. And then for the sections that ask about what page you're referring to, example as shown here, you can just leave it blank or put NA, but you have to still fill out the section that asks for your personal information, and you still have to print this last page in the application. A lot of persons may think you don't have to print this page because you don't have any additional information to provide, but you have to print this page because it is a part of the application, and if you don't, your application could be rejected on this ground only. And that is basically it, guys. My only other tip as it relates to this form is that when you do print this form out, ensure that the barcode down here is legible, it's not cut off, and information at the bottom of this line is very clear, very detailed, and not cut off in printing, because this barcode is what USCIS actually scans when you send your application in for review. And again, the information that I indicated earlier that you're going to fill in after you print, you're going to fill that in with a black ink, signing, dating, and writing your name in, both for you and your spouse if that is a person that you're filing with jointly. So that is it, guys. Stay tuned for my next video. Thank you so much for sticking and staying. Don't forget to subscribe. It really helps. Check the description below for pertinent information, for what your next upload will be, and for also what the previous uploads were. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.